We are live. UFC Vegas 103 post show. Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. We got you covered right here. First off, if you guys didn't see a crazy John Cena heel turn, absolutely insane. So, yeah, shout out to all my pro wrestling fans out there, which I know me, Dave, and my boy Blake here watched a little bit of the WWE on that aspect. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a card that actually over exceeded expectations with what I felt like. You know, there was a lot of unknowns when it comes to the name value, but the fights absolutely delivered. Main event wasn't maybe what you expected it to be. Obviously, Brandon Royval was slated to be the person facing Manel Kape, which would have been a much more competitive fight. But still, Asu Almabayev coming in at 21-2, great wrestler. Obviously, Kape is a phenomenal striker with good defense on that aspect of it, but it was a one-sided affair essentially from that aspect on that side of things. But before we get too deep into it, we got my main man Blake right here, brother. How you doing tonight?
Man, Jonathan Ramalakan, my man, I am fantastic. This was an earlier fight. We had some things to do, but normally we're here at 12, 1, sometimes 2 o'clock your time. So had a little bit of an earlier fight tonight. So that was actually great, got to start seeing some fights earlier in the day when I really didn't have anything going. And like you said, this was a fight night. And yes, it was held in the UFC Apex. We all know how we feel about the Apex. We wish there was more fans. And this would have been a perfect card that would have gotten fans excited. Maybe they thought the name value for the entire card wasn't quite there to make it a pay-per-view or maybe sell tickets in a different city. I don't give a damn. This card from top to bottom, if you really look at it, was great. I mean, there were so many good fights on this card. Like I said, name value, was it there? No, there wasn't a John Jones. No, there wasn't an Adesanya. No, there wasn't a DDP. But as far as the actual fighting went, fantastic. There were so many good wars on this card. And I'm not even talking about just the main card. I'm mainly talking about the prelims. The prelims was one after another, after another, after another of just great fights, good first fights for a lot of people. There was a lot of great coming out parties for some fighters, as well as just overall wars, man. These guys on this card were tough. And it showed from top to bottom. So if you didn't get a chance to see this, stay tuned because this whole thing was awesome.
Absolutely. And you had a little bit of everything. I mean, you had, Asu Almabayev essentially running away from Manel Kape in the main event that caused the stoppage there, which was a little bit of a strange stoppage. We had a straight up drunken bar fight between Cody Brundage and Julian Marquez. We had a couple of wars between guys like Hyder Emil, William Gomez. Like you said, the prelims were on fire as well, capped off by an excellent knockout on that side of things, which was a beautiful one as well. But let's just kick it off with the main event. Manel Kape coming in as the 6th rank, taking on Asu Almabayev. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, the wrestling threat was really what Almabayev was coming in with. And for Manel Kape, he had no issue with it. He was styling on Almabayev, just really picking his shots, feinting, going in and out, landing really nice punches. There was a couple of times where the finger poke did get involved, which could have played a factor in the finish. But at the end of the day, Manel Kape made it look easy. It was the 3rd round, and he was able to essentially get some really nice damaging punches as Asu covered up. And then when Asu was trying to retreat, essentially ran away, the fight was stopped at that point, right? You don't turn your back to your opponent on that side of things. So, yeah, what was your thoughts on that main event and, Manel Kape's just performance tonight?
I'll tell you what, Manel Kape. Okay, first off, Asu Almabayev obviously came in on a 17-fight win streak. He was ranked at the 8th position in this division, and for the flyweights, he has a lot that he can provide. But when it came to tonight's fight, he just looked like he was a little bit lost. It looks like Manel gave him so much trouble that he really couldn't put a game plan together like the way we've seen him do it in the past. Manel Kape, on the other hand, he looked so fast. He looked primed. He looked poised. He looked like he had that killer mentality in his eye. He looked so fast, man. He was making Asu just kind of dumbfounded out there. he really could never put one thing to the another, to the next, to the next, to the next. He couldn't string anything together. He did have some flashes and flurries of good striking and other things, but Manel Kape, man, he just looked so quick. That jab of his was so quick. His combos were so quick. When he got Asu up against the fence, the barrage of punches that he was throwing were very quick. He was able to hit a really good knee as well. I mean, there was so many things that Manel Kape did very well in this fight that it just overwhelmed Almabayev. And it's unfortunate to see, but you realize that there's levels to this game. Now, I don't know if that was just the jitters of being under the lights and facing a guy like Manel Kape who's in the 5 position, or if that's, maybe just the actual levels of, he's been doing so good, but there's a difference between 8 and 5, and there's a difference for a reason. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that difference was evident tonight. There's, true title contenders and ranked fighters, right? And there's a difference there. And now, is Manel Kape a true title contender? Now that's maybe the next question that's going to be answered. Maybe a fight with Alexandra Pantoja, right, is what some people are calling for as well. So do you think the level of performance tonight, right? It is 8 versus 6, but also the flyweight division is also one that's a little more wide open, right? Do you think the type of performance where he showed the gap of level that he's above that fighter, do you think that earns him a title shot?
I think it speaks volumes to his skill set and where he's at in his career right now, because he is on a trajectory. I think he's 6 of his last 7, 5 of his last 6. His only loss coming to a unanimous decision versus Muhammad Makayev. But I don't know if it actually puts him in the conversation for a title shot per se. I think there's a guy that you still have to go through before you can reach that title. And it's one of 2, but really I would like to see him fight Brandon Moreno. I think Brandon Moreno, and he's not a gatekeeper. Moreno is not a gatekeeper. Him and Pantoja, him and Royval, those guys are the reason they sit up top is because they've been there. They've been to the top of the mountain. Royval hasn't yet, but they've gotten and sniffed the belt. And I think all 3 of those guys are still wildly open for contention, especially against Pantoja. I think you fight somebody like either Royval or Moreno before you're solidified for those fights, because solidified for the championship fight, because I think those guys are the true 1, 2, and 3 in that division. And I don't know if you can just all of a sudden grant somebody who did put on a fantastic performance. All right, he looked great. Like I said, his speed on his punching and his movement was fantastic. But I don't know if I'm willing to give you the championship fight right now. I know you're number 5. I know you're in the top 5. But have you proven it? Is this really the opponent that you needed to prove it against? Or is there one more? And if that's the next opponent, if you take on any of those 2 guys, Royval and Moreno, then you have solidified yourself as the deserving championship contender.
And I think to that point, I think the hardest thing for Manel Kape, he was supposed to face Brandon Royval, right?
Yes.
That was the opponent he was supposed to face, which he was ranked essentially number 1, right below the champion. Brandon Royval. 2 Brandons there. But I mean, Royval lost to Pantoja 2 fights ago. Same thing with Moreno lost to Pantoja 2 fights ago. Albazi just lost to Moreno, so that kind of puts him below that. Kai Kara France, he did beat Steve Erceg, right? But that was also a little while ago. We haven't seen Kai Kara in just a little bit, and he's also lost to Amir Albazi and Brandon Moreno, so it's tough, right? Because for Manel Kape, he was supposed to be in a position fighting the number 1 ranked contender in the division, but now he was, essentially fighting someone below him at the end of the day. So tough for him. I think this is the perfect performance for him, though, right? He comes out, no damage, no wear and tear to the body. It just makes him look better. Now, a couple things he needs to fix: eye pokes, right? He can't be poking his opponents in the eye this much.
Tuck the fingers, man.
It's something that's being, it's been talked about since we've started doing the show, right? So it's just something that you can tell, has an issue with, which, when the fighters are kind of maybe reaching out or, trying to pivot away and circle out, he's extending his arms to try to hold them back in a type of way. So maybe we don't see that one as much. But let's get to this drunken.
Hold on, before you say,
Go ahead. Yeah.
before we move on, I apologize, John. I didn't mean to cut you off there. After last week's performance from Cejudo, who did get his eye poked, right? Jim Miller made a video. I don't know if you saw this. Jim Miller made a video detailing his movement inside the UFC gloves. And Jim Miller was very critical of the eye poke because Song Yadong got Cejudo in the eye and did cause damage. It wasn't like Cejudo was trying to cop out and sneak a no contest, which he didn't, by the way. He ended up, it went to the scorecards, and he ended up getting the loss, even though he could not continue because it was the fourth round. But Jim Miller made a video about the eye pokes. And he said, listen, you can say all you want about the restriction of the gloves. He said, never have I had restriction in these gloves because I don't need to poke anybody in the eye. So, and then he demonstrated what your fingers can do and all the different things your fingers can do inside these gloves. So if, and I'm not saying this happens with Manel Kape, he wasn't giving any excuses or anything. It's just one of those things where if people come out and claim that there is restrictions or the gloves didn't allow me to bend my fingers properly. No, it's as simple as you're leading with an open hand. You don't need to lead with your open hand. Yes, you can style yourself and you can move with one, but when you get close, you've got to close it. And he demonstrated exactly how it happens. And that's why Jim Miller doesn't have many eye pokes. And he was very critical of it. So I think if Manel Kape wants to go forward, just watch your hands, man. Just watch your hand placement. If you're going to go towards the head, curl them. Don't leave them straight because it's going to get you a point deduction at some point, or it's going to cause somebody to give a little bit of extra time in an injury 5-minute situation that you're not going to want. You have plenty of speed. You have plenty of technique. So just watch the hands. That's all I'm saying. Not to get on a soapbox or anything, but I just thought it was interesting that coming off of last week's eye poke finish from Song Yadong and Henry Cejudo and the issue that we've seen, and then his follow-up video from Jim Miller. I just thought it was very interesting. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, you have to know how to maneuver that. Like that's your job, right? You're a paid professional fighter, not a paid professional eye poker. So.
Nobody says I didn't catch that pass from the NFL quarterback because my face mask got in the way. Like, no,
right.
That's part of your job, man.
Exactly. So it's just kind of about knowing the correct technique, or, it's just like things like, yeah, it's easy to grab a horse collar when you're maybe somewhere behind and grabbing a tackle, but now you understand that's not what you do. So you understand different ways to maneuver around it. Same thing with the eye poke. You got to be able to be versatile enough to change your finger maneuvering, which, I mean, it's such a small thing, but it's also happens in such a fly as well too sometimes. But really fun co-main event, right? Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez. And if you didn't see it, these are former teammates, first off. And Cody Brundage, who is normally a wrestler, really didn't have any issues striking with Julian Marquez. You saw his comfort level. It was actually the first right hand of the night. Clipped Julian Marquez right on the side of the head and threw off his equilibrium a little bit. And, from there, I thought it was really cool to Cody Brundage's first couple of minutes. And, after that, he was clipped by Julian Marquez, right? It was essentially I think it was a left hook that clipped him, and he almost had him down and out, right? And had to kind of finish up, and Brundage was able to kind of get himself safe, get into the guard, and then from there, get back up on his feet. After that, Brundage closes out and face plants Julian Marquez. So these guys were going back and forth, one guy dropping the other, or the other guy hurting the other. Super exciting fight, man. What was your thoughts just going through this your head during this time?
Man, I'll tell you what. It's a little hard for me because yes, these guys were former teammates. They've trained together. They've gone rounds together inside the gym. I'm a little biased because Julian Marquez is from the Kansas City area, right? I've spoken with with Julian Marquez. I'm a fan of his podcast, Beauty and the Beast, with Kendra Lust, if anybody knows that is. I don't like the performances that I see from him a lot. He seems to be very hesitant when they call him the Cuban Missile Crisis for a reason. He's got a lot of power in his hands. And first off, Cody Brundage looked really good and he did not seem to be hesitant at all to spar, to fight against his former teammate and friend. But Julian Marquez to me was a little bit more of a disappointment because I just feel like he never lets his hands go when he should. He's very hesitant, and I don't like that fighting style because if you're going to be hesitant on your feet, you better be aggressive on the ground. You can't do both. You can't be hesitant on your feet and hesitant to get a takedown. And I'm just not seeing that from Julian Marquez. He's now what, 9-6?
Yep, 9-6, correct.
Not a great record if you're wanting to keep your longevity within the UFC. Again, you have a lot of talent. You got a lot of talent, and you're great on the mic. You're a good guy. But, man, you got to let the hands go. You got to let him go, or else you're not going to last in this. I also have questions about his possible chin. I think his chin is not as strong as we would like to believe from a guy that big.
I mean, he's taking some knockouts, man. He's
bad ones. So,
and he took a quick, not to cut you off, he took a quick path to the UFC, right? He came in, I believe, through the Contender Series. He didn't really have that many fights on his record yet, so he didn't really have the seasoning coming into the UFC as maybe some of the other fighters that really kind of grind it out on the regional scene before they make it here. So he came in a little bit earlier. He had that really quick run to the top. He called out Miley Cyrus, I believe it was, right? So who was it he called out? And then he told her to shave her name on his chest or something like that.
I don't know. I can't remember.
But, and then he kind of from there just took a couple of L's, right? They were trying to really push him with that. But, I mean, really, for Cody Brundage, fun fight overall. I think these are just one of the fights
it wasn't a bad fight, and he didn't look terrible. It was just the times that he had an opening to let some things go, he played it safe. And that's going to be his downfall if he continues to do that, is trying to be hesitant with his power. The dude has a ton of power, but you got to let it go. It doesn't matter if you have a ton of power and you go and you keep getting knocked out because you're not throwing your hands. Nobody's going to know you have any.
Exactly. The power is just kind of what you can show people, not like you said, what's just kind of in the hands. But before that, I one of those wars that you were talking about between Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovic. And this was a very fun fight, right? Two crazy names there, man. That's crazy. But very fun fight with this one. I thought that Nasrat came out very sharp. He looked really good on his guard. He was really piecing up Esteban, in my opinion. Esteban felt to have come out of the gate a little bit slower. And this was one of those fights where you knew exactly who was winning the fight during each and every moment, but it was who won more of the fight, because it was literally Haqparast's fight up until the second or third minute in that second round. And then from there, Esteban hit him with a beautiful knee late in the third or early in the third round that cut him open, hit him with a beautiful side of things as well, but that aspect of it. But it was just a really exciting fight overall. Split decision win for Nasrat. I thought it really could have gone either way, but Nasrat comes out with the win on this one. And just exciting. Like I said, one of those wars tonight. So thoughts on the fight overall?
Man, this was one of those wars we were talking about where it was just neither guy would fold, and both of them were throwing strikes. Now, Haqparast started the first and second round. He had a little bit more volume and damage in his fights. He cut Ribovic, I believe, at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round.
No, it was the first minute of the first punch.
So
it was the first punch. Nasrat threw a right hand, and he actually caught Ribovic on the lip, and he cut him right open right there. Yeah.
So Haqparast drew blood first. And then he was landing more volume, but then every once in a while, Ribovic would come in and he would land a 1-2-3, 1-2-3, knee, 1-2-3. He has a really, really, really good and really fast right high leg kick that he kept trying to throw on Haqparast, and he was doing a decent job of blocking it, but he was landing it as well. It was coming really fast at him, so I think it was keeping Haqparast at his guard. Just enough distance where he wasn't blitzing him enough, because he knew I've got to time this right so we're not getting into trouble. Ribovic landed a lot of really good fights, and as it got into the late second round, third round, like you said, Ribovic started piling on, started landing a lot more combos, started landing a lot more critical hits. He acted a little bit more of a sniper and not a barrage punter. He wasn't landing high volume, but what he was landing was very accurate and extremely sniper-like. When he hit, he hit. So that's what made it was like, man, this could come down to more of a octagon control damage aspect if you're a judge than it really did as much of a numbers and points game. You know what I mean? And honestly, I'm with you, John. I thought at the end of that fight, it really could have gone either way. I don't think you could be mad whoever they gave it to. I do lean slightly towards Nasrat Hasbarak, but man, this was a fight, and both those guys drew blood. Ribovic ended up drawing blood from Hasbarak at the end of the fight, and man, if you missed this, go back and replay this fight if you can. If you can find it on Twitter, if you can find it online, whatever you need to do, because this fight to me had all the makings of a main event.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because, like you said, it was almost WWE-esque, right? You have one guy coming out the gates, he's winning the match, and then you have Ribovic come back and really get this close. Because, like you said, you lean toward Haqparast. I actually lean towards Ribovic because I feel like, he started picking it up a little earlier in the second round, right? And whilst Nasrat looked like he seemed to gas out a little more in that third round. And I feel like the first round was also a little more competitive than it may have seemed because, like you said, he would come back with the 1-2-3, right? He would come back with those combinations here and there. Credit to Haqparast for having his guard really tight for this fight. Really, really good guard for this. As PJ Tucker is watching the Roach versus Tank Davis fight. Interesting there. He just got cut off the Toronto Raptors. So we got that on the background. But just a wonderful fight. One of those fights that, like you said, you can go back and watch. It's just an instant classic, essentially, between these two guys. But overall, very fun fight. And even the one before this actually was a very good fight. I mean, Haider Amil versus William Gomez, right? Amil coming in undefeated, 10-0. Gomez 14-2 coming in. So, I mean, the combined record, it was 22-2 or 23-2 coming into this fight 25, overall.
25-3.
Yeah, well, before the fight, you know what I mean? So,
my apologies.
But no, you're good. But still, regardless, these guys came in, and it was another exciting fight. If you didn't see Haider Amil's, I believe, last fight or the fight before that, I think he finished this fight on like a 30-punch combination on his opponent, which is super exciting. But I want to give credit to Gomez because Amil came in and he really was on the front foot and just super aggressive for a lot of this fight. Like, I thought a lot of these fights for the prelims and early on the cards, they mirrored each other. You had one guy that was on the front foot pushing him up, but Gomez did a really good job off that back foot, like countering, using that front kick to kind of keep him at bay. But over the pace of the fight, just Amil, first, third round, I believe, for his career that he made it to. And the cardio held out, and he was able to out-wither the storm of Gomez and really just kind of put him down on his back, got the takedown, and essentially, established his dominance towards the end of the fight, capping off a win for that one. So a very, like you said, another close fight with that one. Thoughts on that one? And it was just performance. Thoughts on Haider Amil as well, 11-0.
Yeah, 11-0. His O did not go tonight. He came in here. He had one previous fight, I believe, in the UFC. No, I'm sorry. He had two previous fights in the UFC, and then he was also on, obviously, Dana White's Contender Series, and he is undefeated. And the weird thing about him is he came into this fight, and you saw both of his knees were wrapped. He had a torn MCL, which I don't know if anybody knows about MCLs, ACLs, PCLs. That's a hard bitch to fight on or to do any athletic event on. But there are some guys that can just grit their teeth and tough that out. I believe he also mentioned that he had a torn bicep or rotator cuff, one of the two. So he had double injuries coming into this fight. And when you take that into account with the amount of pressure that he was able to put on William Gomez in this fight. Again, William Gomez, great fighter. Got a lot of talent ahead of him and a bright future. But Haider Amil just continued. He was like a zombie. Or he was like Michael Myers. I would say he was more like Michael Myers. He continued to stalk you at a pace that was just almost unmatchable. It always keeps that fighter on their back foot. Gomez was on his back foot half the time, circling around the cage, could never really gain center control. Hyder just looked like Michael Myers stalking down his prey, Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm telling you, his pressure was great, but then his combos, the way he was able to land multiple shots in a flurry all at once, he never lost stamina. Even in that third round, when you thought both fighters, I mean, Gomez was definitely tired, and Hyder was tired. But man, when he threw, it didn't look. There was a difference between his transition from when he's stalking to when he's throwing, and his throwing looked full force. It looked full stamina, even though both tires were drop dead dog tired. Both fighters were drop dead dog tired. Say that 10 times fast. Man, he was just
like dropping bars.
He was just extremely impressive, and I can't wait to see him fully healthy against some of these guys, because I think he's gonna be a problem in that featherweight division. The more he gets, the more octagon time he gets. He's gonna be deadly, man. He just looked so good tonight for being an injured fighter with 2 major injuries. So all hats off to both fighters, but hats off to Hyder Emil. I mean, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was coming in on 2 injuries because, like you said, I mean, he did have a little bit of, especially towards the end of the second and beginning of the third round. I feel like that's when he hit that first maybe gas ball, but he did get that second wind a little bit later too. So that was just an exciting, just even to be able to tough that out. Like you said, having an MCL torn coming into this fight and also potentially like a bicep tendon, rotator cuff, the dude's an animal to be able to come in and do that. Now, first fight of the night, ended in a knockout between Danny Barlow and Sam Patterson, but Barlow was actually the one coming in undefeated, 9-0. He was a minus 245 favorite, or Sam Patterson was a plus 245 underdog, I should say. And this was a southpaw versus conventional matchup. Danny Barlow overextended on the left hand. Sam Patterson caught him with a beautiful counter right, and he almost was shook by his own power when he caught him with that hand, because he caught him and Danny got hurt, started stumbling back, and Sam almost didn't realize that he hurt him, had to just take a quick second, go, and started scrambling. Beautiful follow-up shots that made him win this fight. It was when Danny Barlow was backing up and he was loading into the fence or leaning into the fence. Sam Patterson came in with a beautiful shot that was perfectly placed, dropped Danny Barlow. He could not get back up after that. Sam Patterson getting the job done.
Yeah, man. And like you said, he was a plus, was it 235, 245 underdog coming into this fight. I think most people probably would have put their money, if they were going to put it on Sam Patterson, they would have put it on a submission finish. I believe he's got about 5 guillotine chokes. He also has a arm triangle choke. He's got a rear naked choke. Rarely is he finishing by TKO or knockout. He's usually more of a submission expert. But as he got on the mic after the Danny Barlow fight, he said, this is the last fight on his contract with Dana White in the UFC. He's going into that meeting with Dana White looking for a new contract. I think he 100% earned it. And even John Anik on the cast said, I think that conversation is going to go spectacularly in your favor. Because of, Danny Barlow, it was so funny because in that fight, Danny Barlow's corner, because he came out hot and he looked really good. He had some crisp strikes right off the bat. And Danny Barlow's corner, you could hear them say, what did they say? What did I tell you? You
texted it to me.
I texted it to you. Hold on, let me find it real quick.
Oh, he was like, Patterson's scared out of his mind.
Yeah, he said, he said, he's scared out of his mind right now, Barlow. Almost instantly right after that, Patterson was able to land the knockdown. And I don't know if it was more of a knockdown or if it was kind of a good hit and a trip on Barlow's part. He just couldn't get his feet underneath him, and that's why he fell. But then the follow-up against the cage with the uppercut right to the face, which shut Barlow down. That was really the finishing strike that ended Barlow, was Patterson's uppercut against the cage. It wasn't the initial strike that knocked him down, but it was the uppercut against the cage. And, all hats off and all kudos to Patterson, because I think this, one, being an underdog, 2, now you're 13-2. All right, you got a really nice record. You got a good win against a good fighter who was 9-0. I believe. So, good showing on his part. Also, way to congratulate the believers who actually put money on you, whether it was for underdog or whether it was for FanDuel, it doesn't matter. He really showed out tonight, and I would be surprised if maybe he doesn't get a performance of the night bonus from that. You're just taking my picture, aren't you, Johnny?
Yeah, bro. I was kind of getting a nice little one for the boy, for the gram for that one. Got to get that out there. But yeah, bro. I mean, like you said, he came in, and I think that's always fun too, right? I mean, betting and sports betting is synonymous nowadays for even non-fans of the sport. So for him to, like you said, hey, thanks, shout out to anybody that placed a little bit of money on me too. That's always a little bit exciting to see on that aspect of it. But yeah, shout out to him getting the win, starting the main card exciting, but even the finish for the prelims card just as exciting with that one, because man, when you see two heavyweights in the ring, it's either going to be a knockout or it's going to be a boring 3-round tired fest, right? And this ended up being a knockout. So Austin Lane versus Mario Pinto. Austin Lane had some good moments in the fight. He actually hurt Mario early in the fight, and it wasn't necessarily the most damaging shot, but definitely rocked him for a little bit. But man, Mario with a beautiful 3-2, followed the shoulder line perfectly and cleared Austin Lane. If he would have hit him with a follow-up, he might have killed the dude. So shout out to the ref for getting in just in time for that one. But man, 10-0, nasty knockout. I think this is his third knockout in a row, or fourth, including Dana White's Contender Series. So exciting stuff there with that one too. So, I mean, we won't get too much into all of them in detail. Break down a couple of your favorite prelims when it comes to it, because that knockout was nasty, but all the fights in the prelims were a lot of fun. Thoughts on just your favorite prelim overall?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that one real quick. Mario Pinto versus Austin Lane. Obviously, Austin Lane, former NFL player, former defensive end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Jacksonville native himself. The dude is 6'6" and absolutely stacked, sitting about 245, 250. And even Pinto commented on it. He's like, that absolute mammoth of a human trying to track you down. Pinto came into the fight 9-1. Austin Lane came in 13-5, if these are updated correctly. Austin Lane, I actually thought looked really good to start that first round. He looked like his stalking ability was really good. He was landing a couple good punches, and Pinto looked like he wasn't quite ready. This was obviously his UFC debut. Might have had a little bit of jitters. It looked like he wasn't quite comfortable letting things go. And everybody knows that he's got a lot of power in those hands. So that first round, Austin looked a lot better than Mario Pinto. He looked like he was poised. You could see it in his eyes. Everything from the announcement where he was staring down the announcer to the end of the first round, he looked pretty damn good. And he's had some nasty knockouts in the past. And I say that, I mean, he's had some, and he's also gotten knocked out in pretty devastating ways before. But this looked like he was starting to put everything together. Then when it came to the second round, Mario Pinto's corner got into his ear and said, listen, man, you got to let it go. You got to throw the hands. You're letting him come to you. You're not attacking. You're being very, I want to say, not submissive, but you're
fighting defensively.
Yeah, you're not fighting effectively, and you're being docile. You got to shake that off, use your fucking talent that got you here, and go out and do it. Now, Pinto this whole time was actually very calm, cool, and collected. I thought, okay, what are we going to see in the second round? Well, it only took 39 seconds for us to see exactly what was going to happen in that second round, because Mario Pinto was able to feint a left, make a little connection, but it was more of a to draw Austin out in bad technique. And then, boom, absolute wicked right hand that sent Austin into the shadow realm, falling back like Johnny Walker against the cage, hands up in the air. I mean, that was devastating power. And it was almost very subtle. Like when you first saw it happen, you didn't think, oh, that's the finishing move. It wasn't like a Hendo over the head, power bomb. It was just a very crisp, technically excellent looking 3-2 3-2 combo. And that 3-2 combo probably earned him some money for a performance bonus as well, because that was nasty power. I'd hate to see what happens when he throws it full force.
Right, because like you said, it was just him essentially just executing a combo. It wasn't like he was trying to you know what usually see when fighters are going for knockouts and when they're kind of poised for that. He didn't necessarily, or he wasn't necessarily going for the knockout with that punch. Well, maybe for him, all of his punches, when you're that much of a power puncher, is a knockout punch. But it was just the technique of it and how he was able to, like you said, use that three to draw out the jab, and once that lead hand was out, follow up with a perfect two right behind that caught him right on the chin. And I don't care who you are, if you're taking a punch on the chin from a heavyweight, you're probably going to sleep more than likely than not. But excellent fight on that one. Run at the prelims, my man. All you. And you're on mute, my brother.
My apologies. All right, prelims, running it down. Ricardo Llanos versus Chepe Mariscal. Another battle of the night. If you guys missed this fight, again, I will implore you, go back and watch it. Ricardo
Banger.
versus Chepe Mariscal. These guys were throwing bombs back and forth. Ricardo Llanos is known for a lot of his spinning back kicks, spinning attacks in general. Chepe Mariscal is known for, one, he previously missed a weight cut on his last fight, and he was extremely apologetic about it. He got with a nutritionist. He figured out he was allergic to, I believe, pine nuts and tomatoes. It was the weirdest thing that you could be allergic to. So he got with his nutritionist, came up with a new diet, came back into the octagon, brought himself a six-pack with him because, the dude was looking jacked. And these two cats went to war. It ended in a decision. It was a 3-round, 5-minute, 15 overall minute fight that you need to go back and watch for tape because Ricardo Llanos looked very good. Chepe Mariscal looked very good. Chepe Mariscal did something that I thought was just extremely impressive, which was his ability to throw on the barrage of punches in a very short time span in the proper moment. So not only did he time up when to throw them, but he also timed up what to throw. His uppercut was landing constantly. His barrage, the 1-2-3s, body head, they were landing constantly. Ricardo Llanos, he landed a lot. I think he landed 3 different spinning attacks and a flying head kick at the end of round 2.
Oh, no, it's Mariscal that landed the flying head kick. I texted you about that shit because that was like a Hitmonlee Pokemon high jump kick, literally. Like the end of the first round, Mariscal goes, runs, takes off, and hits like a Bruce Lee high jump kick and hits him in the face. Obviously doesn't knock him out because of not the leverage there, but damaging shot nonetheless. And I do want to give credit to Mariscal, like you said, with Ramos. He's excellent with the spinning attacks. Mariscal had a lot of that scouted. Like he was able to move out of the way or actually
his ducking ability.
He ducked very good. Or like even close the distance when they're spinning to make sure that you kind of like are body to body with them, right? Instead of being too far away so they can generate that momentum. But excellent fight overall. In my opinion, this one was very similar to the Ribovich, or not the Ribovich. This was the fight before that one, the Hyder Emil versus William Gomez. These two fights were very similar in my opinion because you had Hyder and you had Mariscal who were just on the front foot, and you had Gomez and you had Ramos who were kind of on the back foot, just doing what they can. Both guys had their moments throughout the fight, but it was just, those were two very fun fights that kind of mirrored each other in my opinion.
100%. This was an absolute fantastic fight. I mean, really, everything on the prelims was worth the watch. I mean, I know people have their different, opinions about prelims. I know what we always say here on Fight Bananas: watch the damn prelims because you never know who's going to be the next up and comer. You never know who's going to be somebody you're going to be wanting to look out for, and you never know who you're going to see that's just going to have a wicked knockout. But these fights overall were great battles. There wasn't like a bunch of spectacular knockouts that, oh my God, it was just left and right carnage. But it was gladiatorial in the way this entire card was set up for just decision. And normally when you see a lot of decisions on a card, not necessarily your most favorite thing. This card, you want to go back and watch every one that was a decision. I promise you that. Moving on down the list, Danny Silva versus Lucas Almeida, another banger of a fight. I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record because I could repeat this with every fight on this prelim. Danny Silva got the decision win again. Almeida looked good. Silva looked good. Both guys went to war. Blood was drawn. Like, you got to go back and just watch this entire prelim card because it was fantastic. I will say the one I did not watch as much was the Andrea Lee JJ Aldrich fight. Aldrich did get the decision win. I missed a lot of it. I accidentally dozed off a little bit. My apologies, fight fans. But the opening fight of the night, Charles Johnson
energy
versus Ramazanbek Tamarov was a great battle. Again, you could have taken Charles Johnson versus Tamarov versus Danny Silva, Lucas Almeida, Ricardo Llanos, and Chepe Mariscal. Any of those fights, you could have just interchanged the fighter names, and the fight was the same. Back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. Charles Johnson looked really good. But Tamarov ended up getting the win. But, I mean, it's almost like I saw the same fight 3 or 4 different times tonight, just interchanging the names. Just battles, back and forth, striking matches, great ground games. Oh, man. Who was it? It was
as you figure out that point, Tamarov versus Energy, like you said, that was a great fight. I think with Charles, the main thing is maybe he could have opened up just a little bit more in those first 2 rounds. I feel like in that 3rd round, he really, caught his own. I believe that could have been a 10-8, right, for a lot of people, potentially with that one. But it was a very exciting fight, very close fight as well with that one.
What was the fight that was it? The Silva Almeida or Llanos Mariscal? I want to say it was Llanos Mariscal, where both guys were on the ground fighting for heel hooks.
Yes, it was Mariscal versus Ramos. It was the end of the 1st round. Those guys were they weren't even worried about punching each other in the face anymore. They were just like, okay, let's heel hook each other. Let's see who gets this. And not luckily, but for no one's heels, thankfully, they didn't get that hook.
And that's something you don't get to see a lot in the UFC. A lot of guys don't fight heel hook to heel hook, but those guys were so evenly matched that they were fighting legs for a minute, which was really cool to see on the ground. And it felt like about a minute and a half. Each one of them was grabbing, reversing, getting position, having something, slipping it out. Like, it was really cool chess match to see on the ground between those two. So overall, this entire fight card was fantastic. The prelims really set the stage for the main card. But yeah, man, this was a really good fight night.
What would you grade it out of 10? I would give it, honestly, dude, like, outside of the main event.
Hold on. No, let me say mine first.
Go ahead.
Then I want to know what you think. And I'm going to take out, if I'm strictly judging it based off the fights, I don't care who fought, just from what I saw on face value, I have to give this card at least an 8.1, 8.2, because the skill set and the outcomes were just awesome to watch. It didn't matter what their names were. You could have thrown these fights and changed anybody's names, and if the fights were the same, I would have given it the same exact score. And the fact that it was lesser named guys might have made it even better. So at minimum, it's an 8.1 for me.
Yeah, I was going to say 8.5, actually. I feel like the 2 fights that kind of were a little bit lackluster was the first female fight of the card. That one was a little bit slower paced. And then the main event, right? The main event was very one-sided, which we kind of expected a little bit more so of, right? That's why the odds were kind of as spread out as they were. But outside of that, if you take those 2 cards those 2 fights off of this card, this is a 9/9.5 with every other fight on this card. Like, they were very much so wars, knockouts. You got everything you wanted to out of this card. I think this is an excellent fight night. Two great UFC fight nights back to back for the UFC. And next week we got, oh boy, Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev. My goodness, that's going to be an exciting one. I think Pitbull is making is going to be fighting on that card. There's a couple of fights on that one as well. I think the Pitbull, actually, that's the Miami fight.
There's Fazeev. There's
Gaethje
versus Bahamondos. You got King Green versus Mauricio Rufy.
Yeah, we got some fun fights on that one too. Yeah. So Make sure you guys keep it locked out here. Blake, final thoughts before we close out here, brother.
Final thoughts, man. I think I've kind of already said them. UFC Fight Night was fantastic from the jump. Kape versus Almabayev.
Almabayev.
I just said Ankalaev, so I had to readjust what I said. But no, this was. I know it's early in the season, and I hate to be like, "Oh, this was the best one we've seen," but this is the best fight night I think we've seen from top to bottom. 8 out of 10 fights were fights that you want to go back and rewatch. That's an 80%. I think our scoring system of 8.1 and 8.5 was fantastic. I mean, I think that's spot on for what we saw tonight, and I'm really looking forward to next week. But man, if you guys missed it, go back and see if you can rewatch almost every one of these fights tonight, because they were fantastic. Shout out to Sean Sterling, who always shows up in the comments section. Dude, you're the man. Thank you so much for your support. John and I love you, as always. You're always giving Fight Bananas a whole lot of love.
Always, man. Sean is the main man. Always in the chat, my boys. So appreciate
You
you.
thought it was a letdown? Sean, you thought this was a letdown? Really? Whatever.
I did see some rumblings with that online, which I couldn't understand, really. You know, I really had a great time watching this card. I felt like, even for not knowing, like you said, a lot of the names off the top of your head, or not having as much name value, these boys came out and performed, right? So
Sean,
it was hard.
Sean, this card was for true fight fans. I'm sorry. No, I'm just messing with you, buddy.
Right. No casuals in here, Sean. Come on,
casuals, Sean.
So we appreciate you as always, buddy. Blake, my man, as always, it's been a wonderful show. If you guys aren't subscribed, make sure you guys subscribe, follow, like, all that good shit. And we'll take care of you guys as always. We'll see you guys after the next fight, and have a great